Let's bring in Chris Stirewalt, NewsNation's political editor and host of The Hill Sunday. We watch it every weekend. Good to see you, Chris.
Hello, my friend.
All right. Good to see you. You know, Republicans can only afford to lose 3 votes in the Senate. We've been tracking this, and several senators are already saying they don't support the bill as currently drafted. And let's take a look here on the screen, because among the key sticking points, the spending cuts, Medicaid reforms, and the debt limit and the deficit. So how do you see it? Can Majority Leader John Thune come up with a compromise bill in the Senate that House Republicans can accept? That's one of the big questions that's circling Washington, from what we understand.
Well, one of the oldest stories in Washington, and it happens every time, or almost every time, is that a House Speaker of either party pushes and pushes and pushes and pushes and pushes to get a vote, to get legislation passed through the House. Politically painful votes, right? There are a lot of members of the House who took very ugly votes that they didn't want to have to make, and they were browbeaten, and they finally said, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. So they did it. And then what do? You send it over to the Senate, and the Senate says, no, 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 no. So these House members are now thinking, we have cast these politically damaging votes for all of the 30 or so, let's say, members who are in competitive districts on the Republican side in the House. Now they're looking over at the Senate, where the inputs are totally different. Right? It's totally different on the Senate side. There's no SALT caucus on the Senate side because there are no blue state, high tax Republican senators. That's just not, that doesn't exist in the Senate. There are also, by the way, senators who represent poor states, big, poor red states that rely on Medicaid, and they don't want to cut Medicaid. They don't want these cuts to Medicaid. So the Senate's going to chop it up, and then they're going to ping pong it back to the Senate. And the president says the deadline's the 4th of July. The deadline's really the end of the year, right? This is really, they have to get this done before the end of the year. And the number one priority in the Senate for them is make the tax cuts permanent. That's what they're about. The stuff that the House put in to get it passed, they probably don't care about.
Yeah, and you know, our colleagues at the Hill note that the biggest obstacle to getting the bill to the president's desk may be those fiscal hawks in the Senate who don't think the bill does enough to cut the deficits. The Congressional Budget Office estimates it will add $3.8 trillion with a T to the debt over the next decade. So, listen, Americans are concerned, right? But how concerned should they be?
Well, that number, that $3.8 trillion number, gets to be closer to $6 trillion if the little tricks that they put into the legislation to try to create, this is another bipartisan favorite in Washington, create a program that you hope will become popular so that it can never be repealed. You put a sunset, look at what they did with the tax cuts that they're wrestling with right now. They couldn't find a way to do it honestly in 2017. So what they did was say, well, we'll just say that they expire. And then that way we can make up a number. And then you get to the time where they're supposed to expire and they say, well, we're not expiring anything. And they put a bunch of that in this legislation. The United States lost last week its last AAA credit rating. The world is looking at the United States dollar and is looking at the creditworthiness and the credibility of the United States and drawing a not unreasonable conclusion that it may come to pass in the next 20 or 30 years or less that the United States will basically either opt to default on some debt or just devalue our currency to such a point that we're paying back the voluminous debt that we owe with cheap money, right? Intentional inflation to try to get out of this debt pit, which makes everybody poor. Those are things that in the United States 20 years ago, no one would have thought about. And now, because of the perfidy of a bipartisan perfidy in Congress of a refusal to do hard things and do their job, here we are.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.